Those moments when he'd go quiet and stare off into nowhere, and you knew, without anyone saying, that you couldn't speak to him, couldn't touch him, just had to leave him be until he'd turn, almost shyly, and smile with his eyes. And Jimmy, the way he'd look at me when he thought no one else was noticing. How he couldn't bring himself to say the right words to me even then. And if I had seen them, the signs of our future, would it have made any difference, I wonder? Or would it all have turned out the same? Sometimes you only see what you want to until something presses your face so fast up against it there's nothing else you can do. But in the beginning, it was the boys and myself, and none of us with a care in the world. Patrick and Jimmy had known one another since they were little kids at primary school, altar boys together at St. Pat's. Val had met up with them later, the second year of the grammar school. And me? I'd been lucky enough to live in the same street, catch the same bus in the morning, lucky enough that Jimmy's mother and mine should be friends. The boys were into jazz and football, though for Patrick it was the Arsenal and Jimmy Spurs, and the rows they had about that down the years. Val now, in truth, I don't think Val ever cared too much about the football. Just went along. White Hart Lane or Highbury, he didn't mind. When it came to jazz, though, it was Val who took the lead, and where the others would have been happy enough to listen to anything as long as it had rhythm, excitement, as long as it had swing, Val was the one who sat them down and made them listen to Jerry Mulligan with Chet Baker, Desmond with Brubeck, Charlie Parker, Lester Young. With a few other kids they knew, they made themselves into a band. Patrick on trumpet, Jimmy on drums, Val with an aging alto saxophone that belonged to his dad. After the first couple of rehearsals, it became clear Val was the only one who could really play. I mean, really play. The kind of sound that gives you goosebumps on the arms and makes the muscles of your stomach tighten hard. It wasn't long before Patrick had seen the writing on the wall and turned in his trumpet in favour of becoming agent and manager rolled into one. About the first thing he did was sack Jimmy from the band. Val's was the career to foster, and Jimmy was just holding him back. A couple of years later, Val had moved on from sitting in with Jackie Sharp and Tubby Hayes at the Manor House, and depping with Oscar Rabin's band at the Lyceum, to fronting a quartet that slipped into the lower reaches of the Melody Makers' small group pole. Val was burning the proverbial candle, going on from his regular gig to some club where he'd play till the early hours, and taking more bennies than was prudent to keep himself awake. The result was, more than once, he showed up late for an engagement. Occasionally he didn't show up at all. Patrick gave him warning after warning. Val, in return, made promises he couldn't keep. In the end, Patrick delivered an ultimatum. Finally walked away. Within months, the quartet broke up, and needing ready cash, Val took a job with Lou Prager's orchestra at the Lyceum. A musical diet that didn't stretch far beyond playing for dancers, the occasional novelty number, and the hits of the day. At least when he'd been with Rabin, there'd been a few other jazzers in the band, and Oscar had allowed them one number a night to stretch out and do their thing. But this, the boredom, the routine, were killing him, and Val, I realised later, had moved swiftly on from chewing the insides of Benzedrine inhalers and smoking cannabis to injecting heroin. When the police raided a club in Old Compton Street in the small hours, there was Val in a back room with a needle in his arm. Somehow, Patrick knew one of the detectives at West End Central well enough to call in a grudging favour. Grudging, but a favour all the same. When Val stumbled out onto the pavement 24 hours later, and still wearing the clothes he'd puked up on, Patrick pushed him into a cab and took him to the place I was living, in Kilburn. I made tea, poured Patrick the last of a half bottle of whiskey, and ran a bath for Val, who was sitting on the